Getting hooked and away moves equals psychological suffering. When our thoughts and feelings hook us, they reel us in, jerk us around, and pull us into away moves. Indeed, almost every recognized psychological disorder, depression, anxiety disorders, addiction, chronic pain, trauma, OCD, you name it. It is due to this basic process. Difficult thoughts and feelings hook us, and they pull us into away moves. Said slightly different, when we respond to our thoughts and feelings in obey or struggle mode, or often both, we behave in self defeating ways. And this very same pattern also underpins bad habits, unhealthy routines, relationship problems, poor performance, unhealthy perfectionism, excessive people pleasing, procrastination, and all other self defeating or life draining things we do under pressure. This diagram below illustrates that. So you have your away, your towards, and then you have hooked, which you get difficult situations, thoughts, and feelings. So you can either go towards your goals or away from it. So unhook and move towards the life that you want. Fortunately, there are times when we manage to unhook ourselves from difficult thoughts and feelings and do towards moves instead. And the greater our ability to do this, the better life gets. Our suffering reduces and our well being increases. In a nutshell, that is what this book is all about. A big part of the work in this book is getting in touch with your values, your heart's deepest desires for how you want to behave as a human being, how you want to treat yourself and others and the world around you. For example, think of someone you love very much. When you're being who you really want to be in this relationship, how do you treat your loved one? I'd guess, and I could be wrong, of course, that you would want to be loving, kind, supportive, honest, reliable, caring, and considerate. If I guessed right, if those are the qualities of behaviors that you desire, then we will call them values. To make this clearer, pick an important role that you play regularly that involves interacting with other people, i.e., friend, partner, parent, neighbor, employee, student, or team member. Now, imagine I interview one of the people that you interact with when you're in that role. And imagine I start asking this person about you. I begin by asking about how you generally tend to treat them and what you say and do when you're distressed or struggling. I begin by asking about how you generally tend to treat them and what you say and do when you're distressed or struggling or going through a tough patch. Next, I ask them how you generally tend to treat other people. And finally, I ask them your three greatest qualities are in terms of how you interact with others. Now, if magic could happen, if dreams could come true, what would you love this person to answer and genuinely mean? Please take at least 2 minutes to think about this. Now, why do I feel like I'm in school? Now, please take a minute to think about this. Now, repeat this exercise for the other role that you play. Again, take another 2 minutes. So, how did it go? If you did the exercise, you probably identified some values, some ways that you want to behave when you're in those roles. If you're confused or found the exercise too difficult, no need for concern. We'll go in all of this in depth later in the book. This is just a preliminary taster. The simple fact that you are reading this book suggests that you are living by your values right now. You are reading it because you care about reducing your suffering and improving your life. You may also be reading it because you want to be a better friend, a partner, a parent, a relative, or a neighbor. This points to the value of being cared towards yourself or others or both. It's important for us to clarify our values because once we know what they are, we can make good use of them. Okay, we can utilize them as an inner compass to guide us through life and help us make wise choices, and also a source of energy and motivation to help us to do more towards moves. Another big part of this approach is to learn unhooking skills so that when the difficult thoughts, feelings, memories, or urges show up, we can rapidly unhook from them, and before they can pull us into the away moves. The better we get at unhooking and choosing towards moves, the better our quality of life and greater our health, well-being, and happiness. This is illustrated below with the away and towards feelings. So when you're hooked and you're unhooked, so you have your away and then towards, you have hooked and unhooked, difficult situations, thoughts, and feelings. So choice points. The diagram above is officially called the choice points. Because in any moment when life is difficult and painful thoughts and feelings show up, we potentially have a choice. We can respond to what is happening with effective, life-enhancing behaviors, which is your towards moves, or ineffective, life-diminishing behaviors, which is your away moves. We only have this choice if we have developed good unhooking skills. Without them, we have little choice. Okay, hold on. It said without them again. All right, so without them, our default setting is to get hooked and pull away into away moves. And often we don't even realize that this has happened until it is too late. Basically, the less our ability to unhook, the less choice we have. Instead, our thoughts and feelings tend to dominate us, run our lives, and dictate what we can and cannot do. I originally co-created the choice point with two colleagues, Joe C. and Ann Bailey, in order to simplify the ACT model, and we'll be using this concept throughout the book. So indeed, shortly I'll ask you to fill in a blank choice point diagram based on your life as it is today, so that you can use it as a roadmap for the journey ahead. But first, let's quickly consider 3 strategies for success as you work through this book. Number 1 is treat everything as an experiment. Throughout these pages, I will ask you to play around with many different tools, techniques, and strategies that I can expect to be helpful. However, nothing works for everyone. Everything that you do will be an experiment. You'll never know for sure what is going to happen. So please bring an attitude of openness and curiosity to each experiment in this book, and really notice your experience. If it turns out to be helpful, as intended, that's all well and good. But if it is not helpful, please either modify it to suit your purposes or drop it and move on to the next part of the book. In other words, don't take anything on board just because I say that it is helpful. Trust your own experience. Take as little or as much from this book as you would like, and leave anything that is not for you. Number 2, expect your mind to interfere. Whenever I say to do something that pulls you out of your comfort zone, your mind is likely to protest. It's as if we have a reason-giving machine inside our heads, and as soon as we're faced with doing something uncomfortable, it starts cranking out all the reasons why we cannot do it, shouldn't do it, or shouldn't even have to do it. That won't work for me. That's silly. I can't do it. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I'm not in the mood. I'll do it later. I'm too anxious. I'm too depressed. I can't be bothered. And so on. Sometimes the reasons our minds come up with are based on harsh judgments. I'm too stupid, weak, and lazy to do it. I'll only screw it up. I don't deserve a better life. At other times, they are anxiety-based. But what if it goes wrong? What if other people get upset? What if I make a fool out of myself? And yet, other times, they're based on past experiences. I've tried that before and failed. And sometimes they're based on our feelings. I'm not in the mood. I can't be bothered. I don't feel like it. Whatever reason-giving machine comes up with, please remember what I had said in the last chapter. This is basically your mind trying to protect you from uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. So when those reasons to skip an experiment arise, there's a choice point for you. So, option 1 is to allow your mind to dominate you and to talk you out of the exercise in question. Option 2, allow your mind to do whatever it wants, but don't buy into it. Let it chatter away like a radio playing in the background while you get on with the experiment. If you've read a lot of self-help, you may be surprised that I didn't suggest a third option. Get into a debate with your mind. Start challenging those negative thoughts and push them away and replace them with more positive thoughts. We don't do that in ACT because, as we'll explore later in the chapters, a lot of the time it simply doesn't work. So, number 3, practice is essential. A new client walked into the room clutching the first edition of this book. She sat down on the couch, threw the book on the coffee table, and snapped. I've read your whole book. It didn't work. I see, I said, a bit taken aback. And while you were reading it, did you practice all the exercises? She looked at me sheepishly. No. Well then, I said, I'm not really surprised it didn't work. If we want to become competent at any new skill, playing a guitar, driving a car, cooking Japanese food, we need to practice. We can't learn new skills simply by reading a book about them. For sure, reading books can give us the ideas about new skills, help us to understand what is involved, and provide us with insights into how we can develop them. But it won't actually give us the skills. Even if we read 10,000 books about playing the guitar, driving, or cooking, we won't develop the skills to do those things. We need to actually pick up that guitar and strum away, or get behind the wheel and hit the road, or get into that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. And the same is true for psychological skills, like the ones we'll cover in this book. Simply reading on how to unhook will not give you the unhooking skills. You actually have to do the experiments and practice the exercises repeatedly. Alright, so time to complete a choice point. Okay, so now it is time to complete a choice point diagram. I strongly encourage you to either A, draw one on the sheet of paper. It's easy, just draw 2 straight points with the arrow diverging from the central point. Or B, print one from my free book, The Happiness Trap, Extra Bits. As the name suggests, this ebook contains additional materials to support the main book, including audio recordings and printable worksheets. You can download a copy from the free resources page on my website, www.thehappinesstrap.com. Once you have drawn it or printed it, please fill out the choice point diagram, guided by my prompts below. If you're not currently able to write, then at least spend a few minutes imagining what you would write if you could. There's an example of a completed version near the end of the chapter. So if you get stuck at any point, skip ahead and use it for guidance. Part A. What are your hooks? Number 1. At the bottom of your choice point, write down 4 or 5 of the most difficult situations you're dealing with in your life today, i.e., work problems, medical problems, relationship issues, bullying or rejection, prejudice or discrimination, financial problems, lack of friends, or bereavement. Number 2, underneath that, write down difficult emotions that tend to reoccur. Sadness, anxiety, guilt, loneliness, anger, and or difficult sensations. Tight chest, knot in the stomach, racing heart, feelings of numbness or emptiness. Number 3, write down any urges that you struggle with. The urges to smoke, drink, gamble, or yell. Number 4, finally, write down unhelpful thoughts that tend to frequently occur, especially self-judgment, i.e., I'm stupid, I can't cope, I keep screwing up, I'm a loser. Beliefs, I'll have to do things perfectly, I must always please other people, my life is never getting better. And negative predictions, I'll fail, I'll get sick, they'll reject me. If relevant, also include recurrent painful memories. As you work through this book, you'll learn a wide range of unhooking skills to take the impact out of those difficult thoughts and feelings so they can't jerk you around, hold you back, or bring you down. How to let them flow through you without sweeping you away. You'll also learn how to take effective action, guided by your values, to improve those difficult situations or leave them if that is a better option. Part B, what are your away moves? Alongside the left arrow, write down common away moves that you'll make when you go into obey or struggle mode in response to the thoughts and feelings that you have written at the bottom. Away moves are mostly things that you do physically: eating too much junk food, shouting at your loved one, watching too much TV, hiding away in your bedroom, or drinking excessively. However, they might include things you do inside your head, such as worrying, obsessing, and ruminating. Technically, those are known as cognitive processes. So, as an individual thought like, I am going to fail, at the bottom of the choice point, it just pops up. And there's nothing that you can do about that. But if the response to that thought, you start worrying, ruminating, or obsessing, then those cognitive processes would go under the away arrow. Remembering away moves are behaviors that you personally consider to be unworkable, taking you away from the life that you want to build, away from the person that you want to be. This is your own personal viewpoint that you're mapping out, nobody else's. Also, remember that away moves are things that you do, not things that you feel. So emotions, feelings, sensations, and urges are not away moves. They're always going to the bottom of the choice point, never away from the arrow. Away moves are unworkable things you do in response to all that stuff at the bottom. Part C, what are your towards moves? No matter how difficult your life is, no matter how badly you've been hooked by your thoughts and feelings, no matter how extensive your away moves, one thing is for sure: at times you do some towards moves, such as reading this book. So alongside at the right arrow, begin by writing towards moves that you have already been doing, i.e., reading The Happiness Trap. After that, write down the towards moves that you'd like to start doing, making sure to include learning unhooking skills. This could include goals that you want to pursue, actions that you want to take, and values you want to live by. Note, towards moves are about what you do, not what you feel. So you wouldn't write feeling relaxed or happy on the towards arrow. You'd write that down, what you do differently if you want to feel that way. If you have trouble with this, look at an away move and ask yourself, what would I like to do instead of this? Think back to 2 roles that you've picked in the exercise above. What did your answers suggest that you'd start or keep doing in those roles? Think about the 3 fundamental of health and well-being I mentioned in the last chapter: exercising, eating healthy, and building strong relationships. What would you like to start or keep doing in these arenas? If you find it easy to fill in the towards arrow, all well and good. But if you find it hard or impossible, rest assured that it is completely normal. Most people find it quite challenging and sometimes anxiety provoking. So most people find it initially quite challenging and sometimes anxiety provoking. So if your towards arrow is empty or sparse, note that that's not a problem. Simply acknowledge right now, at this point in time, you don't have much of an idea of what you want to make life meaningful. This will soon change. Later in the chapters, I'll take you through some exercises which will help you to fill in all of those blanks. So away moves and towards moves, hooked and unhooked. I see excessive drinking, zoning out for hours in front of something, avoiding socializing, avoiding exercise, eating crap, spending much of the day in bed on weekends. All right, so example of a completed choice point diagram is below. I mean, if you can read that, amazing. If you can't, You're kind of in the same boat I am. But where to from here? So now you have a sense of what this book is about. So take a moment to notice, what is your mind saying? Is it enthusiastic? Let's get cracking. Or skeptical? This guy is full of it. Or anxious? This sounds like hard work. Or doubtful? I don't think this will work for me. Or is it just staying quiet? Whatever your mind is saying, simply acknowledge it. If it is saying something that makes you want to persist, that is great news. At times, our minds are helpful and encouraging, so let's appreciate that when that happens. On the other hand, if it is saying something that makes you want to give up, there's a choice point for you. Don't you give up because your mind is saying something negative, or do you let your mind say whatever it wants? Acknowledge that it is trying to protect you from discomfort and carry on reading. I hope you choose the latter, because in the next chapter, we're going to explore a topic of vital importance. Chapter 3 now, the black hole of control. Michelle has tears streaming down her eyes. What is wrong with me, she asked. I have a great husband, great kids, great job, a lovely home. I'm fit, healthy, well off. So why aren't I happy? It's a good question. Michelle seems to have everything that she wants in life. So what's going wrong? This is actually a common scenario in the Western world. And later in this chapter, we'll explore why. But first, let's take a look at another popular happiness myth. The myth number 3. It's easy to control what you think and feel. Many self-help books and programs subscribe wholeheartedly to this myth. One of the popular claims you'll encounter is this: if you repeatedly challenge your negative thoughts and instead fill your head with positive ones, you'll be happy, confident, and successful. If only life were that simple. This fact is, we have less control over our thoughts and feelings than we would like. I'm sure that you don't need me to tell you this. I'm willing to bet you've already tried this countless times to think more positively about things. But those negative thoughts keep coming back, don't they? As we saw in chapter 1, our minds have evolved over 300,000 years to think the way that they do. So it's unlikely a few positive thoughts. It's not that positive thinking has no effect at all. Some techniques do often make us feel better, at least temporarily, but they don't get rid of negative thoughts in the long term. The same holds true for uncomfortable emotions such as anger, fear, sadness, guilt, and shame. There are multitudes of psychological strategies to get rid of such feelings, but you'll undoubtedly discover that even if you can make them go away temporarily, after a while, they'll be back. And then they go away again, and then they come back again, and so on and so on. I'm guessing that you've already spent a lot of time and effort trying to have good feelings and positive thoughts instead of those bad or negative ones. I know I have. And you'll probably find that as long as you're not too stressed or your situation isn't too challenging, you can often pull it off. However, if you have discovered that the more stressed that you are, the more difficult the situation that you're in, the less ability you have to control your thoughts and feelings. In really difficult situations, when life hits you hard, when you're tackling major challenges or stepping out of your comfort zone to face your fears, you simply cannot expect to feel happy. Sadly, this myth is deeply entrenched into our culture, that we tend to feel stupid, weak, or inadequate when our attempts to control our thoughts and feelings fail. This raises a question. Given it so obviously contradicts our direct experience, how did this myth get established in the first place? The illusion of control. The human mind is a wonderful thing. It enables us to make plans and invent new things, coordinate actions, analyze problems, share knowledge, learn from our experiences, and imagine new futures. The clothes on your body, the chair behind you, the roof over your head, and the book in your hands. None of these things would exist but the ingenuity of the human mind. This enables us to shape the world around us and conform it to our wishes. to provide ourselves with warmth, shelter, food, protection, sanitation, and medicine. Not surprisingly, this amazing ability to control our external environment gives us high expectations of control in other areas as well. Now, in the material world, control strategies genuinely work well. If we don't like something, we'll figure out how to avoid it or to get rid of it, and then we do so. A wolf outside your door? Get rid of it. Throw rocks at it, or spears, or shoot it. Snow, rain, or hail? Well, you can't get rid of those things, but you can avoid them by hiding in a cave or building a shelter. Dry, arid soil? You can get rid of it by irrigation and fertilization, or you can avoid it by moving to fertile ground. But how much do we control over our outer world, over our thoughts, memories, emotions, urges, and sensations? Can we simply avoid or get rid of the ones that we don't like? Well, let's see. Here's a little experiment. As you keep reading this paragraph, try not to think about ice cream. Don't think about the color or the texture. Don't think about how it tastes on a hot summer's day. Don't think about how good it feels as it melts inside your mouth. Stare at the floor and try not to think about ice cream for 1 minute. How did you do? Exactly. You couldn't stop thinking about ice cream. Now here's another little experiment. Remember the last meal you ate? Well, I just did like an hour ago. So whatever it was, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, remember it as vividly as you can. What you ate, how it was cooked, and how it tasted. Done that? Good. Now delete it. Totally obliterate that memory so that it can never come back to you ever again. How did you fare? If you think you succeeded, check again. See if you can still remember it. Next, tune into your left leg. Notice how it feels. Feeling it? Good. Now, make it completely go numb. So numb that it could cut it off with a hacksaw, and you wouldn't feel a thing. Now here's another little thought experiment. Suppose I am a mad scientist. If you know me, that's not a huge stretch. And I've kidnapped you for an evil experiment. I've wired you up with the world's most sensitive lie detector, technically known as a polygraph. This machine measures your heart rate, your breathing rate, your blood pressure, brain waves, and adrenaline levels. And if it detects even the tiniest hint of fear and anxiety, a red light will flash and a loud alarm will ring. So you're strapped in a chair, wired to this thing. I placed my hand on a big red lever attached to a massive electrical generator. And with a mad crackle, I inform you, in this experiment I'm about to do on you, you must not feel any anxiety whatsoever. Because if you do, I will pull this lever and I will electrocute you with 1 million volts. What would happen? You'd be fried, right? Even though your life depends on it, you cannot stop yourself from feeling anxious. Indeed, even if that shows up in a situation, would itself be a trigger for massive anxiety. Now, for one last experiment, stare at the star below or above. If you can stop yourself from thinking for 2 whole minutes, that's all you have to do. For 2 minutes, prevent any thought whatsoever from coming into your mind, especially any thoughts about the star or the task I have asked you to do. Hopefully by now you're getting to the point that the thoughts, feelings, sensation, and memories are not that easy to control. As I have said before, we do have some control over these things, but it's not so much less than we want. I mean, let's face it, if these things that are easy to control, wouldn't we all just live in perpetual bliss? How we learn about emotional control. From a young age, we are taught that we should be able to control how we feel. When we are growing up, you should probably heard a number of expressions like, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. Don't be so gloomy. Look on the bright side. Big boys don't cry. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. There is no need to be frightened. I'll give you something to be frightened about. Think positive. Don't be scared. Cheer up. It may never happen. No use crying over spilt milk. There's plenty more fish in the sea, and so on. With words such as these, the adults around us sent a message again and again that we ought to be able to control our feelings. And certainly it appears to us as if they had controlled theirs. But what's going on behind closed doors? In all likelihood, many of these adults weren't coping too well with their own painful feelings. They may have been drinking too much, taking tranquilizers, crying themselves to sleep every night, having affairs, throwing themselves into their work, or suffering in silence while slowly developing stomach ulcers. However they were coping, they probably didn't share those experiences with you. And then those, hopefully on rare occasions, when you did get to witness their loss of control, I'll bet they'll never say anything like, "You see these tears rolling down my face? This is because I'm feeling something called sadness." It's a normal emotion that we all feel sometimes, and I'm going to teach you some psychological skills so that you can handle it effectively. The idea that we should be able to control our feelings is strongly reinforced in our school years. For example, the kids who cried at your school were probably being teased for being crybabies or sissies, especially if they were boys. Then, as you grow older, you probably heard phrases, or even used them yourself, such as, "Get over it! Shit happens. Move on. Chill out. Don't be such a chicken. Snap out of it. Toughen up. Build a bridge and get over it. Deal with it. Take it on the chin. Suck it up. Don't have a pity party. Don't worry about it. Relax. And don't think about it." So on. So these phrases imply that we should be able to turn on and off our feelings at will, like flicking a light switch. And this myth is compelling because many people around us seem, on the surface, to be happy. They seem to be in control of their thoughts and feelings. But seem is the key word here. The fact that most people are not open and honest about the struggle that they go through with their own thoughts and feelings. They put on a brave face and keep a stiff upper lip. They're like a proverbial clown crying on the inside. The bright face paint and chirpy antics are all we see. I commonly hear my clients say things like, "If my friends, family, colleagues could hear me now, they would never believe it. Everyone thinks I'm so strong, confident, and happy." Penny, the 30-year-old receptionist, came to me 6 months after the birth of her first child. She was feeling tired, anxious, and full of self-doubt at her mothering skills. At times, she felt incompetent or inadequate, or just wanted to run away from all the responsibilities. At other times, she felt exhausted and miserable and wondered if having a child was a huge mistake. On top of that, she felt guilt for even having such thoughts. Although Penny attended regular mother group meetings, she kept her problems a secret. The other mothers all seemed so confident that she feared that if she told them how she was feeling, they would look down on her. While Penny eventually plucked up the courage to share her experiences with the other women, her admission broke a conspiracy of silence. They had all been feeling the same way to one degree or another, but they had all been putting on the same act of bravado, hiding their true feelings for fear of disapproval or rejection. There was a huge sense of relief and bonding as these women opened up and got honest with one another. As we grow up, many of us are taught to bottle up painful feelings and hide them from others. That having such feelings means that we are weak, silly, or defective. As a result, most of us are reluctant to tell our friends or family when we are feeling sad or anxious or not coping in some way, for fear of being judged. Our silence about what we are feeling and the false front that we put on for others simply adds to the powerful illusion of emotional control. So why is it so important to dispel this myth? To answer that, let's consider, what's your problem? Presumably, if you're reading this book, there's more room for your life to improve. Maybe your relationship is in trouble, or you're lonely or heartbroken. Maybe you hate your job, or perhaps you have lost it. Maybe your health is deteriorating. Maybe somebody you love has died, or rejected you, or moved away. Maybe you have low self esteem or self confidence. Maybe you have an addiction, or a financial problem, or legal difficulties. Maybe you're suffering from depression, anxiety, trauma, or burnout. Or maybe you just feel stuck or disillusioned. Whatever the problem is, it undoubtedly gives rise to unpleasant thoughts and feelings, and you probably spent a lot of time and effort in struggle mode, trying to escape them or blot them out. But suppose that struggle against your bad thoughts and feelings is actually making your life worse. In ACT, we have a saying for this: the solution is in the problem. How does a solution become a problem? What do you do when you have an itch? You scratch it, right? It works so well that you don't even think about it. Scratch the itch and it goes away. Problem solved. But suppose one day you develop a patch of eczema. The skin is very itchy, so naturally you scratch it. However, with this condition, the skin cells are highly sensitive. So when you scratch them, they release a chemical called histamines, which are highly irritating. And these chemicals inflame the skin even further. So after a while, the itch returns, but more intensely than before. And of course, you scratch it again, the same thing happens. In the short term, there's relief. But in the long term, it gets even worse. The more you scratch, the worse the eczema, the greater the itchiness. Scratching is a good solution for a fleeting itch in normal, healthy skin. But for a persistent itch in abnormal skin, scratching is harmful. The solution becomes part of the problem. This is commonly known as the vicious cycle. And in the world of human emotions, the vicious cycles are common. Here are a few examples. Joe fears rejection, so he feels overly anxious in social situations. He doesn't want those feelings of anxiety, so he avoids socializing whenever possible. He doesn't accept invitations to parties or pursue friendships. He lives alone and stays at home every night. This means that on the rare occasions when he does socialize, he's even more anxious than ever because he is so out of practice. Furthermore, living alone with no friends or social life just serves to make him feel completely rejected, which is the very thing that he fears. Maria also feels anxious in social situations. She copes with this by drinking heavily. In the short term, alcohol reduces her anxiety, but the next day she feels hungover and tired and often regrets the money she spent on alcohol or worries about embarrassing things that she did while under the influence. Sure, she escapes anxiety for a little while. The price she pays is a lot of other unpleasant feelings over the long term. And if she ever finds herself in social situations where she can't drink, her anxiety is greater than ever because she doesn't have alcohol to rely on. Priscia's overweight and hates it, so she eats some chocolate to cheer herself up. For a few moments, she feels better, but then she thinks about all the calories that she just consumed and how that will add to her weight, and ends up feeling more miserable than ever. There's a lot of tension built up between Alexei and his wife, Savannah. Savannah is angry at Alexei because he works long hours and doesn't spend enough time with her. Alexei doesn't like those feelings of tension in the house, so he avoids them. He starts working longer hours. So to avoid them, he starts working longer hours. But the more that he works, the more dissatisfied Savannah gets, and the tension in her relationship steadily increases. So you can see these feelings. These are all examples of the struggle, trying hard to avoid, getting rid of, or escape from unwanted thoughts and feelings. Below, I have organized some of the most common struggle strategies into two main categories: fight and flight. Fight strategies involve fighting with or trying to dominate your unwanted thoughts and feelings. The flight strategy involves escaping or avoiding them. So, fight strategies: suppression. You try to directly suppress unwanted thoughts and feelings. You forcefully push unwanted thoughts from your mind or you push your feelings deep down inside. Arguing. You argue with your own thoughts. For example, if your mind says you're a failure, you might argue back, "Oh no, I'm not. Just look at everything I have achieved in my work." Taking charge. You try to take charge of your thoughts and feelings. You may tell yourself things like, "Snap out of it, stay calm," or "cheer up," or trying to force yourself to be happy when you're not, or trying to replace negative thoughts with positive ones. Self-judgment. You use harsh self-judgment to try to bully yourself into feeling differently. You call yourselves names like loser, idiot,
Ew.
or criticize and blame yourself. Don't be so pathetic. Flight strategies. Opting out. You opt out of situations, events, or activities that tend to trigger uncomfortable thoughts or feelings. For example, you drop out of a course, avoid going to a social function, procrastinate on an important task, or avoid a challenge to escape feelings of anxiety. Distraction. You distract yourself from the thoughts and feelings by focusing on something else. You smoke a cigarette, eat some ice cream, go shopping, or play computer games. Substances. You try to avoid or get rid of unwanted thoughts or feelings by using substances such as drugs, alcohol, sugar, chocolate, junk food, tobacco, and so on. So, the problem with struggle strategies. What's the problem with using methods like trying to control our thoughts and feelings? The answer is nothing. If we use them sensibly, appropriately in moderation, we can use them in situations where they can realistically work. Using them doesn't stop us from behaving like the sort of person that we want to be, doing the things that matter to us. So if we're not too distressed or upset, if we are just dealing with the run-of-the-mill everyday stress, then deliberate attempts to control our thoughts and feelings aren't likely to be a problem. Indeed, in some situations, distraction can be a good way of dealing with unpleasant emotions. You just had a row with a loved one and you're feeling hurt and angry. It can be helpful to distract yourself by going for a walk or burying your head in a book until you feel calm. Similarly, if you're feeling stressed and drained about a grueling day's work, then having a glass of wine to unwind may be the ticket. However, struggle strategies become problematic when we use them excessively. We use them in situations where they can't work, and using them stops us from doing things that matter to us. When struggle is excessive. To varying degrees, every one of us uses struggle strategies to avoid unwanted thoughts and feelings. And in moderation, this is no big deal. For instance, when I'm feeling particularly anxious, I sometimes eat chocolate. This is basically a form of distraction, an attempt to avoid some unpleasant feeling by focusing on something else. But because I only do this in moderation, it is not a major problem in my life. I maintain a healthy weight and don't give myself diabetes. However, back in my 20s, it was a different story. Back when I was a junior doctor and I found my work incredibly stressful, I ate truckloads of cakes, cookies, and chocolates to avoid my anxiety. On a bad day, I would go through 5 whole packets of double-coated chocolate Tim Tams. As a result, I became seriously overweight and developed high blood pressure. Not exactly a great role model for my patients. Because I had used it excessively, this struggle strategy had serious consequences. If you're worried about upcoming exams, you might try to distract yourself from anxiety by watching television. Now that's fine if you're only doing it every now and then. But if you do it too much, you'll spend all your evenings watching television and you won't get any studying done. This, in turn, will create more anxiety as your studies lag further and further behind. Therefore, as a method for anxiety control, distraction simply can't work in the long run. And then there's the obvious, dealing with your anxiety in this way prevents you from doing the one thing that would genuinely helpful: studying. The same goes for zoning out with alcohol or drugs. Moderate drinking and taking the occasional tranquilizer isn't likely to have serious long-term consequences. But if we use these struggle strategies excessively, this easily leads to addiction, which then leads to many complications, which in turn gives rise to even more painful feelings. Using the struggle strategies in situations where they can't work. If we love somebody deeply and we lose that relationship, whether through death, rejection, or separation, we will feel the whole range of painful emotions. What we feel varies enormously from person to person, which may include different emotions, including anger, sadness, anxiety, guilt, loneliness, despair, or fear. Such feelings are normal reactions to any significant loss, whether a loved one, a job, or a limb. We expect to feel them as part of a normal grieving process. So, fortunately, rather than allowing ourselves to feel all those perfectly normal emotions, many of us do what we can to push them away. We might bury ourselves in the work, drink heavily, throw ourselves into a new relationship on the rebound, or numb ourselves with drugs. But no matter how hard we push those feelings away, deep down inside, they are still there. And sooner or later, like a muscle-bound, time-traveling humanoid killer robot with an Austrian, I'll be back. It's a bit like holding a ball under the water. As long as you keep pushing it down, it stays beneath the surface. But eventually, your arms get tired, and the moment you release your grip, the ball leaps straight into the water, straight up out of the water. Donna was 25 years of age when her husband and child died in a tragic car accident. Naturally, she felt an explosion of sadness, fear, loneliness, and despair. But Donna didn't know how to effectively handle those painful feelings, so she turned to alcohol to push them away. Getting drunk would temporarily soothe her pain. But once she sobered up, her pain returned with a vengeance. And then she'd drink even more to push it away. But by the time Donna came to see me 6 months later, she was knocking back almost 2 bottles of wine a day, as well as taking Valium and sleeping tablets. The single biggest factor in her recovery was her willingness to stop running away from her pain. Only when she learned how to open up and make room for her feelings, to take the impact out of them, and allow them to freely come up and stay and go in their own good time, was she able to come to terms with her loss. Once she was able to do this, and enabled her to grieve effectively for her loved ones and channel her energy into building a new life. Later in this book, we'll look at how she accomplished that. But when struggle strategies prevent us from doing what matters. What domains of life are most important to you? Health, work, family, friends, religion, sport, nature? It's no surprise that life is richer and more fulfilling when we actively invest our time and energy in the aspects of life that are most important or meaningful to us. Yet, all too often, our attempts to avoid unpleasant feelings get in the way of doing what truly matters to us. For example, suppose you're a professional actor. You love your work. Then one day, quite out of the blue, you develop an intense fear of failure, just as you are due to appear on stage. So you refuse to go on. A malady commonly known as stage fright. Refusing to go on stage may well temporarily reduce your fear, but it also stops you from doing something that truly matters to you. Or suppose you've gone through a divorce. Sadness, fear, and anger are all natural reactions. But you don't want to have these unpleasant feelings. So you try to lift your mood by eating junk food, getting drunk, or chain smoking. But what does this have to do with your health? I've never met anyone who didn't care about their health. And yet many of us use emotional control strategies that actively damage our physical bodies. So, how much control do we actually have? The degree of control that we have over our thoughts and feelings depends largely on how intense they are, and what situation we are in, and the less intense the emotions, and the less stressful the situation, the more control that we have. For instance, if we are dealing with the typical everyday stress, and we're in a safe, comfortable environment, such as our bedroom or a yoga class, or the office of a coach therapist, coach or therapist, then a simple relaxation technique can often make us feel calmer right away. However, the more intense our thoughts and feelings are, the more stressful the environment that we are in, the less effective our attempts to control will be. Just try feeling totally relaxed when you're going for an interview or arguing with your partner or asking someone out on a date, and you'll soon see what I mean. While you act calmly in those situations, you will not feel relaxed no matter how hard you practice your relaxation techniques. We also have more control over our thoughts and feelings when the things that we're avoiding aren't too important. For example, if you're avoiding cleaning your messy garage or your car, then it's probably fairly easy to take your mind off of it. Why? Because in the larger scheme of things, it's simply not that important. If you don't do it, the sun will still rise tomorrow. You will continue to draw breath, and nothing bad will happen to your job, your health, or your loved ones. All that will happen is that your garage or your car will remain messy. But suppose you suddenly develop a large, suspicious looking black mole on your arm and you avoid going to the doctor. Would it be easy to take your mind off of it? Sure, you could go to a movie, watch television, or surf the internet, and maybe for a little while you could stop thinking about it. But in the long term, you'll inevitably start thinking about that mole because the consequences of avoiding the action are potentially serious. So, because many of the things that we avoid are not that important, and because many of our negative thoughts and feelings are not that intense, we find our struggle strategies to often help us feel better, at least for a while. Unfortunately, though, this leads us to believe that we have much more emotional control than we actually do. What is experimental avoidance? No one likes feeling bad, so naturally, we all try to avoid or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings. Psychologists call this experimental avoidance, the ongoing attempt to get rid of or avoid unwanted inner experiences. Experimental avoidance is normal, and in low levels, it is not a problem. But a high level of experimental avoidance leads to excessive use of struggle strategies, which comes with three big costs. Number one, when used excessively, these strategies eat up a lot of time and energy that could be invested in a more meaningful, life-enhancing activities towards moves. Number two, we may feel hopeless, frustrated, or inadequate because although we are trying very hard to get rid of them, those unwanted thoughts and feelings kept coming back, often with greater intensity than before. When we use excessively or inappropriately, many struggle strategies lower our quality of life over the long term. In other words, they become away moves. These unwanted outcomes lead to even more unpleasant feelings, which then leads to even more struggle. It is a vicious cycle, and I do mean vicious. There is a wealth of research showing that a high level of experimental avoidance is a major factor in depression, anxiety disorders, addiction, impaired performance, lower self-esteem, relationship conflicts, eating disorders, disengagement, and demotivation at work, OCD, trauma, chronic pain syndrome, and many other psychological problems. It is worth noting that sometimes struggle strategies are automatic and unconscious. For example, you may have heard the vagus nerve, the second largest nerve in the body, after the spinal cord. Sometimes when we experience intense pain, physical, emotional, or psychological, our vagus nerve literally numbs us. It actually cuts off our feelings to spare us from the pain. This isn't a conscious choice. This is simply our nervous system looking after us. Unfortunately, this gives rise to other unpleasant feelings, such as numbness, emptiness, hollowness, or a sense of being dead inside, a fairly common experience in depression or trauma. In a nutshell, here's how the happiness trap, in a nutshell. To increase our happiness, we try to avoid or get rid of the unwanted thoughts and feelings, but paradoxically, the more effort that we put into this struggle, the more difficult thoughts and feelings that we create. It is possible to get a sense of this for yourself. to trust your own experience rather than simply believing what you read. So please complete the following exercise. If you don't wish to write in this book, you can print out a worksheet from the free e-workbook, The Happiness Trap Extra Bits, downloadable from the free resources page on www.thehappinesstrap.com. There are 3 parts to this exercise, and I highly recommend that you write them down. Write down your answer. However, if you are currently unable or unwilling to do so, please spend at least 10 to 15 minutes seriously thinking about this. So, part 1. What have you tried? By completing this sentence, the inner experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, urges, images, and sensations I most want to avoid or get rid of are. Then next, take a few minutes to write down a list of every single thing you have ever tried doing to avoid or get rid of these unwanted inner experiences. Try to remember every single struggle strategy that you have used, whether deliberately or by default. So note, please do this non-judgmentally, with genuine curiosity. Please do not start judging these methods as good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative. We don't want to get caught up in judgments or righteousness about what we should or should not be doing. The aim is to simply find out if these methods are workable, i.e., do they work in the long term to give you the life that you want? And obviously, if any of these methods do improve your life in the long term, they count as towards moves, so keep doing them. So come up with as many examples as possible, including distraction. What do you do to distract yourself from or take your mind off painful thoughts and feelings? I.e., movies, TV, internet, books, computer games, exercise, gardening, gambling, food, drugs, alcohol, etc. Opting out. What important, meaningful, or life enhancing activities, events, tasks, challenges, or people do you avoid, quit, escape, procrastinate on, or withdraw from? Of course, if they're not important, meaningful, or life enhancing, then opting out is no problem. Thinking strategies. How do you try, consciously or not, to think your pain away? Take any of the following that you have ever done and write them any others that aren't included. Worrying, fantasizing about a better future, imagining escape scenarios, leaving your job or your partner, or revenge scenarios. Think to yourself, it's not fair, or if only. Blaming yourself, others, or the world. Talking logically or rationally to yourself. Thinking positive affirmations, judging or criticizing yourself, giving yourself a hard time, analyzing yourself and others, trying to figure out in others like this. Analyzing the situation, life, or world, trying to figure out why this happened or why life, the world, is like this. Planning, strategizing, constructive problem solving, making to-do lists, repeating inspirational sayings or proverbs, challenging or disrupting negative thoughts, telling yourself this too shall pass, or it may never happen. Other thinking strategies, and then you fill in the blank. Substances. What substances do you put in your body to primarily avoid or get rid of the pain? Foods, drinks, cigarettes, recreational drugs, naturopathic or herbal remedies, tea, coffee, chocolate, aspirin, over-the-counter, or prescription medications. Any other strategies? What other strategies have you used at times to escape, avoid, or distract yourself from unwanted thoughts and feelings? For example, have you tried meditation, having affairs, aggressiveness, tai chi, massage, exercises, picking fights, dancing, music, suicide attempts, self-harming, tolerating it, putting up with it, sucking it up, and getting on with it? Prayer, smashing things, staying in bed, reading self-help books, seeing a therapist or a doctor or other health professional, getting angry at life or other people. Part 2. How has this worked in the long term? Many of those struggle strategies give you a short-term relief from painful thoughts and feelings. But consider, do they permanently get rid of those unwanted thoughts and feelings so they never come back? Most of the time with most of these strategies, how long does your pain go away before it returns? Now, clearly, some of these methods, if used moderately and wisely, will improve life in the long term, in which case they are towards moves, and it makes sense to keep doing them. However, when we overuse or over rely on these methods, when we use them excessively, rigidly, or inappropriately, they have significant long term costs. So, consider when you have excessively or inappropriately used them, what have these methods cost you in terms of health, money, wasted time, relationships, missed opportunities, work, increased pain, tiredness, wasted energy, frustration, disappointment, etc.? Really take your time. Think this through. Part 3. What has this cost you? Finally, consider how many of these methods give you relief from pain in the short term, but keep you stuck or make your life worse, or have significant costs in the long term. On the line below, put a cross in the place that best represents your answer. None, blank, a few, blank, about half, blank, most, blank, all. The higher your level of experience avoidance, the closer your cross is likely to be towards the far right end of this line. Please complete all 3 parts of the exercise above before reading on. If you did this exercise thoroughly and were truly honest with yourself, you probably discovered 3 things. You've invested a lot of time, effort, energy, and money in struggle, trying to avoid or get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings. Number 2, many of these strategies did, at times, give you short-term relief from unwanted thoughts and feelings, but in the long term, they returned. Number 3, many of these strategies, when used excessively or inappropriately, had significant costs in terms of wasted money, wasted time, wasted energy, and negative effects upon your health, vitality, and relationships. In other words, they made you feel better in the short term, but in the long term, lowered your quality of life. How are you feeling? What are you thinking? Pause for a moment and notice how you are feeling. Are you curious or intrigued? Or perhaps you're a bit dazed and confused or disturbed, maybe even anxious, guilty, or angry. If uncomfortable feelings are showing up for you, rest assured that's normal. This is a whole new perspective, which challenges many deeply entrenched beliefs. Strong reactions are common. Also notice what your mind is saying right now. Is it saying something helpful or encouraging? Or is perhaps judging and criticizing you, calling you foolish or stupid? For many readers, it is likely to do the latter. If so, rest assured, you're not foolish or stupid, even if your mind disagrees with me. These strategies you've used are universal. Every person on the planet uses them to avoid or get rid of pain. We all try to distract ourselves. We opt out of things that are difficult. We all try to think our way out of our pain. We all put substances in one form or another into our bodies. Indeed, our friends, family, health professionals often actively encourage us to do these things. The point is, no matter how hard we try to avoid or get rid of these thoughts and feelings, in the long term, they keep coming back. And unfortunately, often what we do to get short-term relief makes our life worse in the long term. It's a vicious cycle, which we all get stuck in at times. Not so fast. Wait a moment, I hear you say, why haven't you talked about the things like giving to charity, or working diligently, or caring for your friends? Isn't giving to others supposed to make people happy? It's a good point. It's not just the things that you do that matter. It's also your motivation for doing them. If you're giving to charity primarily to get rid of the thoughts that you're selfish, or you're throwing yourself into work mainly to avoid feelings of inadequacy, or you're looking after your friends primarily to counteract the fear of rejection, then chances are you won't get much satisfaction out of those activities. Why not? Because when your primary motivation is the avoidance of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, this drains the joy and vitality from what you're doing. For example, recall the last time you ate something rich and tasty to get rid of the feelings of stress, boredom, or anxiety. I'm guessing it wasn't that satisfying. However, did you eat the very same food, not to only get rid of the bad feelings, but purely and simply to enjoy it and appreciate its taste? I bet you found that much more fulfilling. Great advice about how to improve our lives comes at us from all directions. Find a meaningful job to do this great workout, out in nature, take up a hobby, join a club, contribute to charity, learn new skills, have fun with your friends, and so on. And all these activities can be deeply satisfying if we do them because they are genuinely important and meaningful to us. But if we do these activities primarily to escape from unpleasant thoughts and feelings, chances are they won't be very rewarding. Why not? Because it's hard to enjoy what you're doing while you're trying too hard to escape from something you find threatening. When you do things because they are truly meaningful to you, because deep in your heart they truly matter to you, then we would not class them as struggle strategies. We would call them value guided actions. I'll explain this term in chapter 10. And we would expect them to improve your life in the long term. But if those very same actions are mainly motivated by experimental avoidance, if their primary purpose is to avoid or get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings, then we would call them struggle strategies. And it would be most inspiring if you found them fulfilling. Remember Michelle, who seemed to have everything that she wanted in life, and yet she was not happy. Michelle's life is driven by avoiding feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness. She is plagued by thoughts like, I am unlovable, why am I so inadequate, and nobody likes me, along with the accompanying feelings of shame and anxiety. Michelle works hard to make those thoughts and feelings go away. She pushes herself to excel at her job, frequently working late to accommodate others. She dotes on her husband and kids and caters to their every whim. She tries to please everyone in her life, always putting their needs in front of her own. She's afraid to say no to anyone in case she offends them, and spends a large part of every day people pleasing. Michelle learned this behavior early in childhood. Growing up with abusive, domineering parents, she learned from a young age to do everything possible to keep them pleased, or the consequences would be terrible. As a child, people pleasing protected her. But as she continues to do this in her adult life, the toll it takes on her is enormous. And does it get rid of those upsetting thoughts and feelings? You guessed it. By continually putting herself last and working so hard to win others' approval, she merely reinforces her sense of unworthiness. She is well and truly stuck in the happiness trap. How can we escape the happiness trap? Increasing self-awareness is the first step. So notice all the little things you do every day to avoid or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, and carefully track the consequences. Ideally, keep a journal or spend a few minutes each day reflecting on this, or use the form in the happiness trap extra bits. This is important because the faster that we can recognize we're stuck in a trap, the faster we can lift ourselves out of it. Does this mean that we have to put up with difficult feelings and resign ourselves to a life of suffering and misery? Not at all. That would be an example of obey mode, where we allow our thoughts and feelings to command all of our attention and dictate what we do. In part 2 of this book, you will learn new, more effective ways to handle unwelcome thoughts and feelings that are radically different from both struggle and obey. But before we can get to that, there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore. Chapter 4, Dropping the Struggle. Have you ever seen one of those ancient cowboy movies where the bad guy falls into a pool of quicksand, and the more he struggles, the faster it sucks him under? If you haven't, don't worry. They're terrible movies. The point is, if you ever fall into quicksand, struggling is the worst thing that you can do. What you're supposed to do is lie back, stretch out, keep still, and let yourself float on the surface. Then you whistle for your super intelligent horse to come and rescue you. Physically, this takes a little effort, but psychologically, it's very challenging to do because every instinct in your body tells you to struggle. The same holds true when difficult thoughts and feelings arise within us. Our immediate instinct is to struggle. We put out all of those struggle strategies we explored last chapter and use them to fight with or flee from our inner experience. But unfortunately, just as with quicksand, struggling only makes things worse. So what's the alternative? Well, there's a radically different way of responding to painful thoughts and feelings that's far more effective than struggling. But it's so counterintuitive, it can be hard to get your head around it. To help you understand it, I encourage you to do a simple 3-part experiment. And I guarantee you'll get much more out of it if you do it for real instead of just reading about it. But if you're unable or unwilling to do that, then at least vividly imagine it. So, part A, whatever you're doing right now, imagine that in front of you is everything that matters to you. This includes both the enjoyable, pleasing aspects of life, favorite books, movies, sports, games, food, drinks, people, places, pets, and all the activities you love doing, and the difficult, unpleasant aspects of life. All the challenges and problems you are facing. At the same time, pretend the book that you're holding comprises of all the difficult thoughts, images, memories, feelings, emotions, sensations, and urges that you usually tend to struggle with. Part B, caution. If you have neck, shoulder, or arm problems, please do not do this part of the exercise. Just vividly imagine it. When you reach the end of this paragraph, grip the book tightly with both hands, then hold it as far away from you as possible. If you're reading this on a device, you can use that instead. Alternatively, any book or even a sheet of paper will suffice. Once you're holding it firmly with both hands, straighten your arms fully. No bending at the elbows, extending them as far as possible. So you're holding the book at arm's length. This should be effortful. If it's not, then you need to extend more and push harder. Then maintain that position for at least 1 minute. Pushing hard, keeping the book as far away from you as you can. And as you do so, notice with curiosity how you find this experience. Especially note what kinds of thoughts and feelings show up. So how was it? Uncomfortable, tiring, taxing? Most people find that even just a minute of doing this exercise is annoying, wearying, and a source of significant discomfort. Now imagine doing this exercise all day long, for hours on end. How utterly exhausting would it be? Imagine trying to type on a computer, play video games, read a book, drive a car, cook dinner, eat a delicious meal, make love, playing tennis, lying on a beach, and sunbathe at the same time that you're doing this exercise. How would it distract you from what you are doing? Reduce your enjoyment or satisfaction? How hard would it be to do those exercises completely? How much would you miss out on? This is what it's like to struggle with our thoughts and feelings. We invest massive amounts of time and energy in trying hard to push them away. This is tiring, draining, and distracting. And because so much of our attention is invested in this internal struggle, it's very hard to be present, to focus on or engage in what we are doing, and almost impossible to respond effectively to life's many challenges. Now, let's try something radically different. Part C. Again, pretend this book is all your difficult, unwanted thoughts and feelings. And again, when you reach the end of the paragraph, push this book away from you as hard as possible for 1 minute. Then stop pushing and immediately rest the book on your lap. And really pay attention. What difference does it make when you stop struggling with this stuff? Allow the book gently to rest in your lap and stretch out your arms. And take a slow and gentle breath. And with an attitude of curiosity, open your eyes and ears and notice what you can see and hear around you. So what did you discover? What was it like to stop pushing to put down the book and rest it in your lap? So was it less distracting, less tiring, less painful? A sense of relief, a sense of freedom. Was it easier to notice the world around you? Easier to move your arms and hands and take action? This way of responding to unwanted thoughts and feelings is the very opposite of struggling. We open up and make room for our thoughts and feelings. We allow them to come and stay and go in their own good time. We don't let them push us around, and nor do we invest our precious energy and attention in fighting with or trying to get away from them. This frees us up to invest our time and energy in towards moves. It also makes it easier for us to focus on our full attention on what we are doing, which gives us two huge benefits. When we are focused, we A, do things much better, and B, get more enjoyment and satisfaction from potentially pleasuring activities. Much like floating in quicksand, this doesn't come naturally, but the research is crystal clear. When we respond to our thoughts and feelings in this way, symptoms reduce, anxiety levels fall, stress levels lower, depression symptoms drop, even physical pain decreases in conditions like chronic pain syndrome. There's also a third benefit, which many people find surprising. Our difficult thoughts and feelings often contain useful information. Among other uses, they can alert us to problems that need addressing, give us important feedback about life, and help us recognize things we were doing aren't working for us. We can effectively use this valuable information while we are busy struggling with the inner experiences. But we can once we drop the struggle. If that seems psychobabble, gobbledygook right now, no need for alarm. We'll explore this concept in depth in later chapters. Despite those 3,000 published studies on effectiveness of ACT, sometimes people are very skeptical about dropping the struggle. For example, Carl was a 32-year-old businessman with high levels of anxiety. He was continually worrying about getting sick, losing his job, or his wife leaving him. And he had self-judgment thoughts about being unworthy, unlovable, and inadequate. In addition, he was prone to unhealthy perfectionism, constantly striving to do things perfectly. To such an extent, it creates a huge stress and anxiety. For example, at work, a simple task like writing an informal email could take Carl an age to complete because he had to rewrite it 4, 5, or 6 or 7 times until it was perfect. Often he procrastinated on important tasks for fear he wouldn't be able to do them perfectly. And when he did eventually do them, his constant obsessing about the need for a perfect end results sucked all the joy out of every project. When I first took Carl through the exercise above, using an old paperback book, he said, "Can I just do this?" and threw the book across the room. "Yes," I said, "for sure. You've got so many struggle strategies that enable you to do exactly that. Drugs, alcohol, distraction, procrastination, and so on. But how long does it go for before it returns? And how much is it costing you to keep those strategies?" Carl looked tearily. I got up, picked up the paperback book. So throwing this book away is functionally the same as holding it at arm's length. You're struggling with it, trying to get it away from you. You're talking about doing something radically different. We're talking about doing this, I said, resting the book gently on his lap. Carl looked doubtful. "You don't understand," he said. "My anxiety is debilitating. It's unbearable." "Yes," I said. "Right now your anxiety is debilitating. Of course you can't bear feeling that way." I picked up the book, gripped it hard with both hands, and held it at arm's length. "As long as this is the main way you respond to anxiety, it will always be debilitating and unbearable. So, would you like to change that? Would you like to learn a new way of responding? A way to drain its power, so that it is not unbearable and debilitating?" I dropped the book into my lap. Carl nodded. "Great," I said. Of course, doing that with a book is easy. Let's try it with some real thoughts and feelings.